your entrepreneurship tutor, Professor Henry Bwisai of Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Actually retired from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. But I say, I'm retired but not tired. I'm retired but not expired. Today, I want to give a brief talk on entrepreneurial leadership. Now, recently, the right former Prime Minister Raila Odinga called for an intergenerational talks as a solution to Kenya's Gen Z protests. Yes. But even as Raila calls for talks, he recognizes that Kenyan Gen Z are our own children who need help. Let's listen to him.
Ambaye wanaandamana wale ambao wanaitwa Gen Z si waende wazimu, lakini Wakenya ni vizuri watoto wetu, tuzungumze na hawa watoto.
Yes, Honorable Raila Odinga says these are our children. How do we help them? Then he goes on to say that Gen Z demos or demonstrations are only a means to an end. In terms of problem tree analysis, there are root causes for the demonstrations. So, what is the problem?
Ni kuandamana sio mwisho. Hiyo ni inasema kwa Kizungu means one end. Kuna kitu unataka ndio unaenda kufanya maandamano.
Yes, there is something that they want, and that's why they are on the streets doing maandamano, doing demonstrations. Now, that means that the current Gen Z demonstrations are actually addressing a problem. They are symptom to a problem. Look, the picture where the policemen are shooting somebody, this man was actually doing entrepreneurship, was selling masks on the streets, making out a living, and there he was shot. So let us see the causes of the current demonstrations. There may be many causes, but I want to single out poverty and unemployment. Of course, there are or maybe other causes. Let's look at poverty. Kenya generally is poor. Why? Because there are poor incomes, whether from the farm or industry. And why are there poor incomes? Because there are expensive inputs and also bad prices. When we buy inputs into our productions, it's very expensively. And when the products, our outputs are sold at bad prices, then we get poor incomes. But then, why do we have expensive inputs or bad prices? One key reason is poor legislation. Yes, our legislature is not doing a good service to the economy of the country. And why is that so? Well, there is government incompetency and corruption. Indeed, it is none other than the president of the country himself, Dr. William Ruto, who sacked the entire cabinet, citing incompetence. So yes, we have incompetent people in the legislature, in the ministry, in the executive. There is also political patronage and sycophancy. They are the yes men. In fact, people think that the legislature is captured by the executive. So when we have political patronage, when we have sycophancy, when we have government incompetence and corruption, all that leads to poor legislation. And when there's poor legislation, then it translates into expensive inputs because we cannot legislate for better inputs, and for bad product prices, like for the farmer, for example, the farm of maize cannot make ends meet because of the poor prices of the maize, and therefore poor incomes and the poverty. And this sends people, Gen Zs, on the streets. Unemployment. We have a shrinking industry. Yes, quite a number of farms are closing. In the last many months or so before producing this video, about 10 of them have either relocated or closed up. And why is the industry shrinking? Because of high production costs, but also because of competition from imports. And it's high production costs because of high taxes. And again, it boils back to poor legislation. Poor legislation with high taxes. Indeed, the demos of 2024 by the Gen Zs were particularly about the finance bill that was punitive. So those high taxes, poor legislation leading to high taxes, leading to high production costs, and leading to shrinking industry, which leads to unemployment, is the cause of those demonstrations. Competition from imports. Yes, there are, those patronizing politicians, for example, are given favor, make legislature to import quotas and all that, and when they import their products, they compete with the domestic production, and indeed the home industry dies. So there we are. That is one cause of unemployment. Unemployment is also caused by education mismatch. We are using a lot of borrowed and probably even outdated education policy. There is also very poor university industry linkages. So when industry and university are not linked, then education that is being given at university does not match the labor, the demands of industry. When we are using borrowed education policy, we are addressing foreign requirements, and therefore we lead to education mismatch, and graduates are churned out of the universities, but they cannot fit in the labor market, and therefore there is unemployment. Unemployment is also coming from empty promises, poor political representation, and all this is because of non-ideology based campaigns. Yes, we had those campaigns that the Kenyans were promised the sun, but the government cannot even deliver the moon. Electric cars were promised. Employment was promised. Abduction, no abduction was promised. Killings, no killings were promised. But all this became empty promises, and that has now led to unemployment, led to demonstrations and all that. So yes, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga has a point that demonstrations are just a means to the end, that these Gen Z go to the street because there is something they want. So this is a problem. Now, how do we address this problem? And the solution from where I sit becomes entrepreneurial politics. What do I mean by entrepreneurial politics? Entrepreneurial politics broadly refers to the intersection of entrepreneurship and political action. It encompasses individuals or groups who use entrepreneurial strategies and approaches to achieve political goals, whether those goals involve creating new political movements, influencing policy, or even running for office. So, Kenyans are looking for a political entrepreneur in leadership. Political entrepreneurs in leadership. These are individuals who identify opportunities to shape or reshape political landscapes, often through innovative ideas, disruptive strategies, or by leveraging existing institutions for new purposes. So, when we get such entrepreneurs, political entrepreneurs, then indeed we can create a demonstration-free environment and we can start reaping from youth dividends. So we had a problem tree. Now this is a solution tree that now comes out of entrepreneurial leadership. There we are. Instead of poverty, we shall get prosperity. This prosperity comes from good incomes. And the good incomes comes from affordable inputs, or not really bad, but now good prices. And this is a result of good legislation. And the good legislation is a result of government competency and corruption-free policy. When we now have ministers who are competent, who know what they are doing, they are selected not because of patronage, but because of qualification. We have merit-based government system rather than psychophancy. All this now will lead to better legislation. The input will now, the farmer, the industry actor will now have their problems solved. Affordable inputs, good prices, excuse me, it's not bad but good prices, and the good incomes. And when we have prosperity, then we shall remove demonstrators from the street. The good legislation will also lead to low taxes. And when we have low taxes, we have low production costs. And when you have low production costs, the industry starts thriving. And when the industry thrives, then there is employment, particularly for the youth. Good legislation will also lead to export promotion, and all that will lead to thriving industry and employed youth. We are also talking of education job match. If we have our homegrown education policy, a policy tailored to the home environment, then it will lead to education job match. If we have a thriving university industry linkages, then they will lead to education job match. So the industry receives people from the university who are tailored for the needs of the industry. In other words, our graduates are absorbed into industry even before they graduate, and that therefore leads to employment of the youth, and that removes the youth from the streets, and therefore we have a demonstration-free environment, and we reap our youth dividends. Yes, if fulfilled promises, campaign platform promises, if they are fulfilled, if we have adequate political representation where the youth are also fully involved, and this should come when we have ideology-based campaigns. So campaigns, politicians, those entrepreneurial politicians that have ideology-based campaigns. Indeed, we have been looking at some of our manifestos. The rival parties in this country, their manifestos are not very different. So when one group wins, it becomes one group of monkeys. The forest remains the same. When the second group wins, it is just same forest, only different monkeys making monkey business in that forest. So here we are, therefore. This is an objective tree converted from the problem tree and out of entrepreneurial leadership that leads to this situation, and we remove our youth, the Gen Zs, from the streets. Therefore, It may or may not require talks to get Gen Z out of the streets. Addressing their legitimate demands may be the magic wand that Kenya needs. We need entrepreneurial leadership. Now, this boils also down to me, the voter, and you, the voter. We need to look at that. Some of the solutions that I've offered are immediate, some are long-term. But whichever the case, calling for talks, intergenerational talks that will take long. We have seen it before. There are many talks, dialogues that have been made, reports have been made, but implementation has been difficult. So, do we need talks or do we not need them? Thank you for listening, and please leave a comment. This has been your entrepreneurship tutor, Professor Henry Buisa, looking at entrepreneurial leadership that is the magic wand, in my opinion, of removing the Gen Z from the streets.